think we can tie all of this together and say that the information stealers have been very successful in what they're doing. And I just wanted to take some time to sort of go through how these work, because I think it's really important to understand what these information stealers are trying to obtain. Traditionally, these sorts of stealers are used sort of on a personal computer, really. They're designed to steal banking information. Lots of them are very specialized and adept at stealing cryptocurrency information. And of course, yeah, that works. That works really, really well. But if you want a really big payout, then, you know, why not browse through some of these stealer logs and try and find enterprise credentials. They're certainly going to be there, right? And what we see here is sort of this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but you can see here, this is the list of things that an information stealing malware would typically go for. We've highlighted some of these in green that we think are sort of the most important. And we've spoken about it before, but it remains true. Session tokens and cookies are a really, really easy way for threat actors to sort of impersonate someone. Many of those session tokens, they're still living for a long time. They're sort of 90 days without needing sort of a re-authentication. And as long as the bad guys can sort of not trigger a impossible travel alarm or something like that, which we'll get into later, this is a very effective way of bypassing MFA as well. All of that is sort of compounded by the fact that they're taking screenshots, they're key logging, and there's a number of different ways that these stealers are sort of improving. There's a really quite interesting underground market how these stealers work and operate. Many of them sort of steal features from each other, and they're almost sort of in an arms race to deploy new capabilities. So let's have a look at how the tactics, techniques, and procedures for these things work. So as I mentioned before, information stealers can be used to target individuals at home and in the enterprise. And users tend to reuse their passwords in lots of different places. They may log in from their home device as a sort of a BYOD device. So credentials for enterprise accounts may well be stored on a personal computer. That's, of course, outside of the enterprise environment, probably not protected by EDR or antivirus or something like that. What we're seeing is that most of these campaigns are using sort of SEO poisoning, social engineering attacks, malicious advertising, something along those lines, which we'll get into a second, to install the malware. The threat actors are harvesting that information, they're running off, and they're going to sell that information on the deep and dark web. And yes, we look at those logs and we collect them, and we sort of do analysis on whether client information is in there. And of course, there's often quite a few hits on those post ransomware engagement, and that could be a likely way that the threat actor got in. So this year has seen a lot of changes in the way that information stealing malware works, mostly on the delivery side of things. So earlier this year, I think we've got a screenshot here. We released some analysis on this, and this is an example from a couple of different web pages here on YouTube, purporting to sell or not sell, offer Sony Vegas Pro for free. This is classic, right? It even says there in the description, I think, make sure that you disable or remove your antivirus because the files are completely clean. Well, I can tell you right now they're not, and that was leading to information stealing malware. These videos sort of live for maybe a day, 2 days, but then they were quickly taken down by YouTube. So then we started to see a movement away from those sorts of techniques to more clever things like this. This is what is being referred to as click fix, I think, in the sort of the cybersecurity research sphere. We believe at Kroll that this was based on an attack that was sent via phishing by who we refer to as KTA 248, and that actor was delivering these sort of manually. Essentially, these work by just really clever social engineering. There's no sort of vulnerability that's being exploited here. You can read for yourself. All they're asking you to do is to hit your start button, open PowerShell, and copy and paste the malicious code directly into your PowerShell window. There's even video instructions on how to do it. And this is incredibly effective because people aren't trained to spot things like this. It looks very convincing. You browse to a website, you see this pop up, and you go, whoa, there's something wrong with my Chrome, I better fix it. And here's a handy way on how to do so. It's not typically covered in cybersecurity training or anything like that. And these work very, very well, let me tell you. Lots and lots of people are falling for this. We then started to see, sort of in September time, the final form, the thing that we're seeing the most right now, which is sort of, again, another play on a security mechanism, and that is captchas. And this is even simpler. It's a fake captcha, again, on sort of a SEO poison web page, maybe a link in a forum, an ad somewhere. And it's you know, again, it's something that isn't covered in cybersecurity training. Do you know what a captcha looks like? Do you know how it's supposed to work? Usually you just click on something and you have to solve a puzzle or something like that. Well, in this particular case, it is exactly the same as the ClickFix one. Open up your PowerShell console, or in this case, just Windows R, paste the malicious command and hit enter, and that will download and install. In this case, we saw a lot of LumaStealer infections. So if we move on to the next step here, that installation has happened. LumaStealer has executed, and it's going to steal all of these things from your machine. All of these things are really useful in emulating a particular person. The information stealer will gather information on where you are geographically, all of the cookies, login tokens I mentioned before. It can rifle through password managers if they're unlocked. It'll gather banking information, interesting files. It'll go through chat messages, look in there for interesting strings, maybe API keys, things like that. And we do see these as part of ransomware engagements as well. If the threat actor needs to get hold of some credentials quite quickly on an endpoint, they may just drop this information stealing malware and collect it that way. It's a perfectly adequate tool for that. But more often than not, what ends up happening is all of this information is sold on the deep and dark web. And actually, in plain sight as well, I must say, you can go to Telegram, for example. This is an example of a posting on Telegram, and you can use a bot to buy the stolen credentials, and you can see there the list of domains that there could be cookies that are still valid for. So just picking a couple of these out, I can see a PayPal account in there, a Login Live account, a Google.com account. All of those could be very, very valuable places to sort of go hunting for more interesting information, maybe access to a corporate environment. And that's all available for the low price of $1, which is fairly scary. There are other threat actors that specialize in parsing the logs. So this is an example of a folder structure from a machine that's been infected with a stealer. These actors will filter through the logs and understand how useful the data is, and then they'll hike the price up depending on how interesting they think it is. At the bottom of that screenshot there, you can see that there's a working login, a working password, and a cookie for Microsoft.com and Outlook.com. And more often than not, this is going to be used as a way to attack an enterprise environment. Maybe it's for business email compromise. Maybe it's a valid remote desktop. All of those things might be used in that way to attack a corporate environment. And finally, just to round this section off here, those that don't get sold get sort of bundled up together. So we've seen a couple of these recently. This one is 2 gigabytes in size of crypto wallets, access to PayPal, bank, all the sorts of things that could potentially get threat actors some money. And they're, again, just sold in bulk like this. So that's all well and good. They've sold their information, but what happens if a threat actor that knows what they're doing and is intent on causing harm to a corporate environment, what do they do when they get this information? Well, in the case of token theft, really, all they need to do is take that token, put it into their machine, and then they can essentially become that user. Now, there's a bit of nuance here, of course, but this is just to sort of prove a point here that it is possible. Stealing those tokens and having those access tokens live for such a long time gives the threat actor the ability to log into an environment, and then they can do pretty much whatever they want, be that initial access for ransomware, data theft, espionage, conducting business email compromise, fraud, and all of those sorts of things. And I really feel like that's what we are seeing in a lot of our casework right now, is the fact that threat actors have cottoned on to the fact that all of these credentials are out there, they're available, some of these tokens live for a long, long time, and they're a very valuable way, a very easy way of making initial access into a corporate environment. So that's rounding up. Oh, sorry, Laurie, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, George, I was just going to add on, like, I mentioned earlier, like my team does dark web lookups. So like when we do exposure assessments for clients, I mean, just the sheer volume of how many of these postings are out there is shocking. I think almost like every client, when they come to us, they're going to have at least one match. And usually they're going to be in those credential markets, unfortunately.